All right, so Henri Paul, who's an employee of the Ritz Hotel at the time, you believe that he was also working for MI6?
He was not only working for MI6, he was working for the French intelligence.
What's your level of certainty on that?
Absolute certainty.
100% working for French intelligence, 100% that he's working for MI6?
Yes, Tomlinson saw his name in a list of contacts that were being paid. In other words, we would say the word agent doesn't really apply. It means different things in different countries. This guy was not a full-time employee, but he was occasionally employed and given money for his services. With regard to the alcohol, it is now going to be proved in the inquests that the blood samples taken, or apparently taken, from Henri Paul were desperately mishandled. They may not have been his samples. In fact, almost certainly they were not.
Whose were they?
They were the samples of somebody who had killed themselves that day or the day before in Paris. In this morgue, there were a couple of dozen cadavers, corpses, and including suicide victims. And the most common method of using suicide is to drink a lot of alcohol and then put a tube from an exhaust into the car. And that blood sample had an enormous reading of carbon monoxide, which you get from the exhaust fumes.
So are you 100% convinced that the blood sample that was analyzed and attributed to Henri Paul was not his?
It's not me who has to be convinced.
But are you?
Yes.
You are convinced of it?
I am convinced of it.
How did that happen?
Well, it's
or
either...
why?
Or
why?
It's either by accident or by design.
In conducting an autopsy, blood alcohol was significant, at least it was important in terms of the accident.
Right.
What can you tell me about the blood alcohol level of Henri Paul?
Well, the problem was, in the first autopsy, it appears from all the information coming out that the blood was not taken from a blood vessel or the heart, but was taken from bloody fluid in the chest cavity, the left chest cavity. And that makes it more difficult to interpret, but the alcohol in that bloody fluid was 0.174. A couple days later, blood was taken from a vein properly, and that was 0.187. So it's similar, very similar and close enough.
Are those essentially the same readings?
Essentially the same, and it means a high level of alcohol.
If I had a blood alcohol level of 0.17, which is the first read, or 0.18, which is the second read, and we're walking around and not close enough for you to smell alcohol on me, and I hadn't spoken to you, would you suspect that I had been drinking?
Not if you were just walking slowly and not talking, so there's no slurred speech, no decisions to make. As soon as you'd come to a place where you have to decide whether to go right or left, you would be hesitating. But it is possible for an experienced drinker to be walking at a 0.17 and not appear to be having drunk anything.
All right. A lot of talk about the carbon monoxide found in Henri Paul. First, what do we know was found, and what does it mean? In
the first autopsy, 20% carbon monoxide. Second autopsy, 12%. It's a high level, and it needs to be explained. It doesn't cause you to die. When we die from carbon monoxide poisoning of fire, it's 50–60%. But 20% carbon monoxide means that 1/5 of your red blood cells are not functioning because they're blocked by carbon monoxide and they can't pick up oxygen. So this causes symptoms. 12% would be appreciably less, and to put it in perspective, you or I now have less than 1% carbon monoxide. A heavy cigarette smoker runs about 6, 7, 8%. So 12% is higher than that, but within range. 20% is much too high.
So 12% is within range for a heavy smoker, or is that still way out of line?
It would be at a possibility, not likely, but a possibility. 20% would not be a possibility.
There has been some talk that perhaps the deployment of the airbags in a Mercedes caused that. That's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. Airbags are wonderful devices, and they contain a nitrogen compound, not carbon monoxide.